So it's not compulsory to register for VAT if you're an Airbnb owner or you run an Airbnb unit or a booking.com unit or short-term accommodation. It's not compulsory unless you've reached the R1 million threshold. Running Airbnb, so the difference between residential accommodation and commercial accommodation is the fact that, well, basically, if we dig through the interpretations, commercial accommodation is when you offer the accommodation in addition to certain services that come with that accommodation. This is usually the provision of a bed and any additional services that you typically find in places like hotels, guest houses, Airbnbs. It's basically when a person isn't going to stay there long term and they simply need an accommodation that provides everything that they need. So the combination of these additional services, utilities, plus the actual provision of a bed to stay in, these comprise commercial accommodation. And commercial accommodation is VATable, whereas your normal residential long-term accommodation is VAT exempt. That is why you find with long-term accommodation for your typical run-of-the-mill conventional lease agreements that you as a landlord, even if you're making over R1 million, you will not have to charge VAT because you're exempted from charging VAT. However, if you're running an Airbnb the same way that you'd be running a hotel, if you reach that threshold of R1 million, you will be required to register and you will be required to charge VAT to all your guests when they stay there. Now, there's some great little tools that a person can use when it comes to accommodation, especially short-term accommodation. There's a specific provision in the VAT Act that actually allows you to charge lesser VAT, so 60% of what you normally charge in certain situations where a guest is still making use of this commercial accommodation, but for slightly longer periods of time, over 28 days. So there are special rules when it comes to accommodation, but the bottom line is because it's commercial accommodation, it is considered an enterprise for VAT purposes, and you will be required to charge 15% on all services that you provide to your guests.